Hey, thank you for having us. We're excited to be here. My name's Tim Stevens. I'm the Global Leader of Strategic Innovation with Verizon. I'm going to have our panel introduce themselves. Today we're going to talk about a use case that collectively we put together as a group. We're kind of excited about what it is that it produced. One of the things that I'm personally very excited about is I've had the opportunity to work with who I think is some of the best thought leaders in the industry. It's that thought leadership that will continue to help us transform the way we do business. I think you guys are going to be excited about the use case. We're going to stand up and talk a little bit about more. But at the end of the day, what I really want to focus in on is the why. How is this going to impact the industry? What transformational things are going to happen from it? Where we see this as the foundational start for a lot of things that we think are coming. And then what the impact could be should any of you or anybody in our broader audience virtually would want to embark on such a mission. Again, my name's Tim Stevens with Verizon. And if we can go right down the panel, Luik, kick us off. Give us a high level about who you are and what you do and why you're here.
Okay. Thank you for the intro, Tim. My name is Loic Barbou. I'm the Chief Architect for Bloomberg Media. And the reason why I'm sitting here today is to talk about the need of distributing our 4K UHD content by using a different mean than satellite. And by finding a new technology that allows us to not only reach new markets, but expand the capabilities and the quality of the content that we distribute. Okay. Before I get too deep into the reason why we're doing that, I'm going to let everybody else introduce themselves.
Fair enough. Eric Bolton, Vice President of Business Development, Zigzi. We are the software-defined component in this fine consortium of a 5G solution. And this is the culmination of almost 2 years of work. So we're looking forward to explaining what we've been doing and why we've been doing it.
Dave Paracco, I'm a distinguished architect in Verizon's 5G and MEC strategy and innovation team. I design a lot of video networking solutions for Verizon. I work with Tim and his team, and I'm one of the principal designers of what we're going to be talking about today.
Hello everyone, Saravanan Sharmagam. I am the Global Lead Solutions Architect for a service called AWS Wavelength. And my role is to basically help partners like Bloomberg build solutions for edge computing and see how we can help them be successful on building solutions on AWS Wavelength.
Great, thanks. Again, really excited to have you here. I want to start with Luik. Really want to focus in on the point of view of the customer because I think that's important. Yeah, we like Eric had mentioned, this is a 2-year journey that we've been on. But I'd like to at least get down to, from a strategy perspective, what was your initial objective? And what was kind of the inspiration that kind of set you on this path? Hey, this is something I want to do.
Okay. Well, I'm going to make it very simple. Bloomberg is a media company that distribute their content globally. Okay, it's all about quality. Okay, it's something that is very, very important for us. Quality, performance. When you said 5G, the first thing that you think about is high throughput, low latency. But that's not exactly what we're talking about here today. Okay, it's by taking a very high quality stream that contains a lot of information and distribute to all those places around the globe. And distribute in a way that you can manage it, control it, and especially being cost effective. From a performance point of view, if you get some problems, if it's too slow, if there's instability in how you actually distribute that content, you're always going to be facing some issues. So the goal of doing this was really to find a way of taking that content that we cannot distribute through satellite today. Okay, doesn't work. So we have to find some other ways. Other ways could be a direct fiber connection. Expensive, and it's very hard to configure and control those type of environment. And when I say distributions, I want to be clear that I'm talking about MVPDs. An example of MVPDs that we took in this scenario, it's Verizon Fios, but that would apply to any other MVPDs. So it's how do we take that content and distribute it to all of those places. The goal of those 5 individuals sitting here today was to try to find a solution to this, okay, that involve all of the technology that were mentioned here. So why those technology? Well, at the initial phase of this project, we actually picked the best of the breed. Okay, we looked at who was on the market. Verizon had the network, AWS had the cloud processing, Zigzi had the software that allowed us to transport the streams. The intention was to combine those things together. Nobody had done that before. So we're talking about a first of a kind. Was that easy? Well, if it was easy, it wouldn't take 2 years to do it. Okay. And I can tell you that we learned a lot. The expectations when we started was, that's going to break, that's going to give us some problems. That's going to be fine and we don't have to worry about it. Guess what? We were 100% wrong. What was supposed to be working didn't work. So we had to make some adjustment. And in order to also test the boundaries of in every layer of the architecture, we really had to come up with, be creative with some really options of trying to see where the system had some problems in terms of either stability, performance, and the test that we've done is overloading a radio tower, overloading a wavelength zone, creating streams that have a huge amount of very large bit rate and see where the problems will be, creating a very large amount of streams and send it through the networks and through the wavelength zones, and also assess the performance there. So did we blow up something? You're damn right. We blew up a lot of things. But we capture that information and we used it to create an infrastructure that I must say is very reliable, resilient, and is performing to the level that we expect. We have been running this infrastructure for a couple of months now, full distributions, end-to-end, without any interruptions.
Great.
And that has been really a challenge that we're able to achieve. So I mean, once again, it's been a journey, and I'm going to let everyone explain that journey. But we onto something here.
Well, let's talk a little bit, and thank you for sharing all of that. We all know this has been a little bit of a learning experience, which is exactly what you do when you're developing new technology. So I want to go over to Dave, because Dave, you and I have been talking about kind of this vision, and we were excited to have a customer like Bloomberg who wanted to go on that kind of journey with us. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what that initial vision was and how that married so well with what Bloomberg was trying to achieve?
So the initial vision that we had was to create a fabric, a software-defined video network fabric that we could deliver and transport both baseband and finished contribution content and distribute and then distribute the end product and be able to facilitate all of that in a hyper-connected manner to cloud infrastructure, to other services. So the idea here is that you have a rich set of services that you could get out of this fabric and use in your workflows. So that's where the impetus for this started, and we thought of what would be the best way to facilitate an aggregate of a whole bunch of content from a whole bunch of different content providers and facilitate getting that to endpoints. And that's what started us down this path. And then I spoke with Eric over here and Zigzi, and I said, hey guys, we have this thing that we're rolling out. I'd like to get you into the lab, our mobile edge compute platform. And then the journey started from there. And so MEC nodes on the larger design or the larger vision are localized nodes that we're using in this larger distribution fabric. So that allows you to get hyper-localized content, and you could do hyper-localized workflows with it. So think of ad insertion, those types of things. Those types of services can run out of a local compute node that's sitting in every major market, basically. We have 17 of them to date, and they cover each market over your cellular network. We're connecting between an 80 and 150 mile radius is what it'll support. So I think I'm really excited because we're demoing this down what we've built, what this collective team built. We're showing live here, running over a commercial network. There's no network's not tuned to for promote this demo. We're using the commercial 5G network that's deployed in the building, and we're showing you this in real time.
It's ironic if you haven't had a chance to go through or go past our booth. We've had a number of people that have come up and said, "Hey, is this doing exactly what I think it's doing? Can we buy this?" And they're literally looking at the gear that we packed up and rolled up to execute the demo as saleable. So we're going to make a couple of them available, I think, at the end of the show. I want to go back, though, so Loic was really focused very specifically about migrating away from satellite transmission. And we know recently with the restack of the C-band spectrum, what's being deployed for 5G, there's a lot of changes going on the industry in terms of distribution architecture. But one of the reasons we went with Zigzi, and I want Eric, you to kind of really talk about it, is because at the end of the day, in order for us to be competitive in this marketplace, we really needed to be delivering the same feature and functionality, the same level of 5 nines that you're getting from a satellite. So tell us a little bit more about the Zigzi platform, and then just how that kind of folded into this objective in terms of, and it's not that we're here to kill the satellite business. Satellite business has plenty of work to do with the U.S. government. There's lots of things going on there. But video is going to get changed a lot over the next couple of years. So, Eric.
Thank you, Tim. And I would just say, starting from the client Bloomberg perspective, first and foremost, been a long client trying to manage a super high quality 4K UHD signal path. As you point out, what we're going to do business-wise with satellite is going to change, right? And how we're going to actually take 224 Scuddies and go to local markets, and how do you manage programming and advertisement and all those other elements. But from a Zigzi perspective, we recognize that a software-defined fabric, which David laid out, is necessary across the multiple network topologies. You've got Amazon wavelength zone, you have specialty zones from AWS into wavelength zone, into the RAN network, into the backbone. So there are the 5 Cs. I've got a content person, I have a cloud, I have a carrier, I have cellular, and ultimately that hits a consumer. And I think one of the bigger things that we tackled was most folks are thinking of 5G in a genuinely consumer fashion, and this was a real business-to-business opportunity. And its implications on the industry are quite profound. And I think that's what we have all been collected, because it's not just something simple. As Loic points out, we stress tested in ways that very few people would hit or take that time and investment across, and this is effectively a hitless system that can't go down.
Oh, we know how much it's been stressed, because we've been stressing a lot of people out at our headquarters in Verizon just doing this. Sarah Vannon, I want to go back though and talk a little bit about the application that we're running in wavelength zone, which is really the Zigzi protocol at this point. But you must, especially in your practice, beginning to see a lot of other applications running at the edge that are going to have, to Eric, to your point, profound implications on this industry. Tell us a little bit about what else you're seeing out there and how that's being applied.
Absolutely. I got to say, I'm pretty lucky and excited to be here, working with the likes of Bloomberg and Zigzi and Verizon together on a project to make broadcast industry look at how they can distribute content differently. Before I answer your question, I just wanted to kind of give a 2-minute explanation on what wavelength zone is, which is the AWS infrastructure sitting in a Verizon and other CSPs 5G network, right, close to the 5G network. Think about all the innovations and investments that the carriers are making in the 5G space, of bringing in more devices, more spectrum, more connected devices, more data is going to be generated in the 5G network. So how can we make our customers successfully harvesting that data as quickly as possible and make a lot of interesting use cases possible as part of the 5G mobile ecosystem is what Wavelength is built for, right? We're building AWS infrastructure, bringing AWS infrastructure close to the mobile network. And one use case, when Dave and Zigzi approached me like, this is a possible use case that we want to look at, I'm like, I was not sure about that this use case is really necessary to be moving away from, because I'm not a media person as such. I'm doing a lot of edge computing stuff, looking at so many different use cases, Tim, you were talking about. Right. But this is a fascinating use case of how we can leverage not only the edge computing zones along with 5G, but the entire ecosystem of AWS network. Like as you can see, if you walk around, a lot of these applications and media distributions and media contribution use cases are moving to the cloud, right? The power of elasticity, the power of security, and all the stuff that cloud provides. these workloads are moving to the AWS cloud, and more customers are deploying their solutions and delivering from the AWS cloud. This is like a natural extension, like the wavelength zone is a natural extension of how we can leverage the power of the region along with the backbone and along with the wavelength zone, which is like close enough to the 5G network, and how it is going to deliver content all the way from an AWS public cloud to a consumer in the 5G space. It's a fascinating use case. As Loic mentioned, we have a lot of learnings, a lot of things we have broken apart, but all the stuff that is coming out of this learning is going to naturally impact a lot more many use cases, right? The use case that we are talking about is connected cars and IoT use cases, smart factory use cases, connected stadium use cases. You name any vertical which can be benefited from 5G, which can be benefited from the power of connectivity, more bandwidth and throughput, and there is always a need for ingesting that data and processing it at the edge. So one use case I can certainly think about is drone delivery. I was just on a call right before this, and how drone delivery is going to really impact our lives day in, day out. Not just delivering products, but looking at several public sector use cases, safety use cases, and all sort of investment that the companies are making in the space. And mobility is such a key aspect of all those things, right? Without mobile connected stuff, you can't do anything about all these use cases. But when you connect mobility into that, you're generating a lot of data. When you're generating a lot of data, either it's video streaming, or you're consuming video packets, or you're sending data real time, you need some sort of compute which can be possible to ingest that data as quickly as possible and then do very cool, interesting stuff, right? We have gone out those days of 100 millisecond latency from a device all the way to the cloud, but there are applications which is coming to the market which need sub 20 millisecond latency, sub 10 millisecond latency to hit a compute where an AWS compute do all the data processing and then do some inferencing at the edge. It's fascinating. You would have seen a lot of use cases that we have proposed that has gone to POC, that is going to production. You know, Verizon has a robust 5G edge blog that you guys propose, and you have always are bringing in customers and partners to leverage what is the art of possibility. And this one is certainly one of the top use case that I'm working on, and I'm pretty excited that we are able to take it to production, right? Friendly production, and eventually, as Loic mentioned, not just one MPVDs, it's like more and more of MVPDs are going to be accepting the content from Bloomberg through an AWS powered network, and 5G AWS edge computing is fascinating.
Yeah, and let's not oversell it, because Dave and I will be out of a job very quickly if we start deploying this. But I want to touch on one thing.
Excited though.
I know.
When we first presented the use case, he wasn't that excited. Just saying.
I do want to make sure, though, I want to lay some a little clarification. When we talk about 5G, what you should really start to reimagine is that it's the 5th generation of network design. And what the 5th generation of network design, and the reason I want to lay this out is because I wanted you to take the mobility piece out of it for a second. The 5th generation network design is about how to introduce compute into all different aspects of the network. Because one of the things that we're looking at too is not only MEC as a mobile edge compute, but M as a multi-access edge compute. Because if I can put edge compute at the edge, even if it's a fiber, wired line, whatever that modality to get you to that endpoint, well, then I've introduced a way of really redeploying a lot of applications. So with that in mind, the one thing that I'm going to go back to Loic here for a second. The one thing I want to, because I feel like what we've laid down is something really foundational. And I do feel like we're at a kind of I don't think we're quite at that crossover point, but if you look at what's happening in the industry, there's a huge shift that's going on between traditional kind of linear broadcast operations and then streaming services. And there's a certain amount of stack that you can do any of a number of ways. In fact, one of the things that we see as a huge proponent is we've had a lot of great entries in the past decade. You know, your Netflix of the world, your Amazons of the world, obviously, and your content that you're pushing out. And they've lowered actually the bar in terms of of how to get into this industry. There's no capital intensive C-band farm. There's not a lot of infrastructure that's required. It's almost democratized it, but that also means that consumers are switching around, they're streaming. So I feel like we've laid a foundation here. So when you think of this, you've got, we've got kind of this use case that you can care for that linear distribution traditional, but I also feel it starts to open up, how do I, what else can I create? What else can I produce? How do I reach other customers? I think you started to lean towards it a little bit, but tell us what would your next step be here once we've laid that foundation?
So I'm going to make it very easy. The answer to that is the best possible content. At the end of the day, today we have the capabilities of pushing a high quality stream, 4K, UHD, to non-traditional platforms. Because then your technology, they can actually take it. But the market on those platforms may be very, very small comparing to our MVPDs today. So saying that, yes, you can actually get what you want in terms of the stream representation with all of the data elements on the stream. And if you have not seen it, it's actually in the Verizon booth right over there. You can see that there's a lot of graphics on that 4K stream. So to provide that and say that only you can get it, and the rest of you, well, not yet, but maybe sometimes in the future, well, we're trying to make it work. We're trying to find a way of taking that high quality content and sending it to all of the places where people can consume it. Okay, it is not the intentions to create something that will be very complicated for the MVPDs to actually to receive it, and that's key to this. Every time you start a direct relationship with an MVPDs, you have to lay down infrastructure. Sending a direct fiber is expensive for it. It's expensive for them. You have to open up their firewalls. You have to go through many months of provisioning something and testing it and securing it. With what we created, that small rack that is over there, 2 5G receivers, 2 network router, that's a part of it, 2 IRDs, and you're good to go. The only communication that we have with that MVPD is a video signal and nothing else. The rest is working. So now we can just take that pattern and reuse it over and over and over, where we are not breaking their IT infrastructure, we're not touching their firewalls. It's 100% an out-of-band process, like satellite, except that it is a new delivery methodology that we are applying here.
So I want to make sure that point is solidly transferred over to you guys, because it's really super important. There's a case at the middle of this corridor right now that's about this big that is replacing essentially what could be a C-band farm that a programmer broadcaster would have to erect in order to get its signal to your house. It's this big, literally. That is really an earth-changing thing. And what Loic just said was it gives him the opportunity now to focus on the one thing that they really want to focus in on is quality of the program, quality of the content. Right? So that is one point I want to make sure we underscore. David, you and I had talked about the universal source of content, because I think that starts to lay out some of the other things that you could start to doing that Loic was mentioning. Could you?
Yeah, sure. So with this fabric that we created, the whole idea behind it is that for a content provider, we could introduce this notion of, as the content provider, you could provide us with one format, and then we could take that format and manipulate it downstream to whatever's needed downstream, so that you only have to worry about doing this once. And through the cloud compute infrastructure that we've stood up, we could do those transformations for you. And that way, we're talking everything from MVPD to even direct to consumer. Those are the types of transformations that can happen on this fabric. So it's very important. So if you think about it, this fabric can serve both your broadcasters, and it could also serve your OTT side of the house too. And that's the idea with the fabric, is that we're able to do both, so that when that convergence does happen, that everybody's talking about. It's an easy lift for a content provider.
And then, Eric, because I know you've got a lot of conversations going on across both the contribution side, distribution side, you're probably seeing a lot of this mixture happening already in a lot of those POCs. What else are you hearing from a trend perspective? And then when you think about what we've done here from a framework, how do you see the marketing positioning itself as we go forward, leveraging a lot of some of the work that's been done here, but I think just in general, the technology?
Well, I can say this because of this team and our long-time experience with our good friends at Bloomberg, that we tend to lead by real-life example. But from a software-defined approach, like I said, we now understand that there's an architecture that involves cloud carrier, radio area network, high-quality content. The levels of rights and the change of the exchange of content has been a super accelerator. So right now you have different people with certain rights, pick a Univision, a Paramount, et cetera, distributing to various streaming services, and that's a multiplier effect. And 5G, as Loic points out, this is a new network that allows us to extend the IP edge in ways that we might not have. So the minute we cross over to, say, multicast, that's going to be fairly disruptive. The way that we're going to acquire content and the quality levels, we've done a lot of things with sports leagues, we were talking about NHL a little earlier, but you're going to have 10K content that's now going to drive consumer adoption of this 5G phone. Like, having a faster phone is not necessarily a compelling event. All of this represents different monetizable models for the industry that need to, what Dave was saying, I'm going to have aggregated universal content that services both legacy channels, new OTT, direct to consumer, and in a seamless and customizable fashion. And that's why this whole neck fabric end to end is, how does one extend that compute? How does one extend the processing? And in the context that we, the broadcast community, understand, because it's a very demanding and different set of critical requirements.
One of the things that really enables a lot of this is the partnership with AWS. So Sarah Vannon, I want to talk a little bit about, I mean, we all went all in on this, right? But I know there are a lot of people who are listening to what we've built and trying to figure out, okay, what's the first starting point? And I think some of the first starting points, because once you've layered down the foundation, is really how to deconstruct some of the applications you have in place. Start to think about what are the things that you couldn't do before because you didn't have this kind of technology available to you. How does Amazon today and your services, how do they help navigate what is really a treacherous kind of move from, I've got existing infrastructure in the cloud that's caring for it, I've got to now deliver this at the edge. And for us who have gone through some of this, we know it's not, hey, just move it. There are things that need to be done. So walk us through what should folks be thinking about when they're trying to embark on that kind of a strategy?
Thanks, Tim, for the question. When a customer starts to embrace AWS public cloud and understands what are the art of possibility in terms of scalability, reliability, and all the things you can do in an AWS public cloud, there is something called a well-architected, right? I'm a solutions architect, and we go by the frame of well-architected. We look at customer requirements, a classical AWS model of working backwards from customer requirements, and how we take customer problem and solve it using AWS services, right? It could be database issue, it could be a media services platform that they want to build, it could be an IoT platform that they want to leverage, it could be pure compute that they wanted to use and bring in their application, right? So as we talk about how to migrate your applications into the AWS cloud, my role as an edge computing specialist is, we didn't build edge compute, we didn't build AWS wavelength for customers to deploy or move their workload completely into the edge. It's not meant for that. The scale of wavelength zone is not anywhere comparable to a scale of a region, right? It is not meant for displacing the workload from the public cloud into the wavelength zone. The idea behind wavelength zone is, when I sit with developers, when I sit with enterprise solutions architect, and ask them to start looking at their application stack, there is almost 20% or even more than that part of their application stack which can benefit from reducing the latency of interaction of that particular application with their clients, right? So the idea is, make the customer understand their own application, because most of it is all running in the region, leveraging compute, databases, and other services that we build using Lambdas and other stuff, right? But as you decouple all these applications, already the software industry is going through decoupling in terms of microservices and other stuff. But as you get deeper into microservices and start to decouple them, there are some aspect of your application stack that can benefit from running close enough to the customer. That's exactly how I approach any use case of understand your use case, decouple your application, and see if there is any need for some application can run in the edge. I'll give you an example, right? DNS. We all know DNS is such a critical function for any application on this planet Earth. Do you know DNS is such an important edge service? And we built our edge portfolio based on DNS requirements, right? Edge services. DNS is such an important edge services. We don't realize how many DNS queries that happens when an application fires up. All these DNS queries have to happen as quick as possible so that the entire application can work seamlessly. If DNS is not working or it is taking an extended time, you will see an impact with your client application, right? So we have already distributed our application using DNS and other parts of the stack which is running in the region. But as we go deeper and deeper into newer application, like VR streaming as an example, AR streaming as an example, every VR stream, if you look at 90 frames per second VR stuff that we're talking about, it needs at every 11 millisecond, you need to send a frame, video frame, every 11 millisecond. So VR is not going to happen. VR is not going to scale enough using public cloud. There are use cases which certainly VR use cases can happen from the public cloud, but when you get to applications which needs that level of low latency and high throughput and consistent bandwidth requirement where 5G provides that, combining that last mile capability and looking at customers' application stack and trying to distribute them is what the journey is about. I see most of the customers are going to take through. A public cloud is a journey that everybody is kind of embracing now and moving. I think edge computing is another journey that is starting to happen, and we are at the tip of the spear where we are all like taking the journey together.
Yeah, you know, it's also interesting, the other one that's out there is clocking. You know, as like a critical, so there's DNS, of course, but as a critical component, as we continue to see, especially from a content perspective, you know, the premium content that's out there right now, not unlike this content, has a timing requirement that is so important. If you look at the sports and news as the critical components only because they're building and bringing together the highest CPM rates, and it's stuff we want in real time, you have to make sure that there's a synchronization that goes on across everything, which not that it wasn't happening before, but now it's more critical than ever. And that's another one of those applications that can sit out there. I want to go through, and we're going to start to go down kind of your last thoughts, but I do want to get to a point. I see that especially this environment, and for everybody who's here, we as a group, we're technology investors. We have we really have the fiduciary responsibility to go out there and invest on the behalf of our companies and building in the right technology to solve some of those problems. But usually those problems fall into a couple of buckets. One, it's broken. There's a defect that we have to fix. Two, it's something competitive that's out there and we want to make sure that we're maintaining. Or three, we're trying to disrupt the market. And I feel like we are at that nexus right now with television in particular, that almost everybody falls into pieces of all those buckets because they're at the same time they're trying to remain competitive. They're also trying to fix some of the things that they know are not even that they're broken, but they're going to start to age out. And then how do you position yourself? So I want to start with Loic, and I just want to go through quickly. What would your recommendation be to what's the first thing that you should be looking at? How am I starting this journey when I think about it's a technology investment, it's a massive transformation that's going on, I need to be able to remain competitive. What's kind of the first step to just get, again, your colleagues on the programming side of the house, on the television side of the house who produce content, what would you recommend that they start doing?
Well, the first thing that comes to my mind, Tim, is that you have to understand what you can control and you have to understand what you cannot control. Okay. And when you understand that, you know when you can turn the dials. Okay. And turning the dials are about, leveraging the right technology in the right place. Okay. what is the right place? Okay. One thing that was not maybe made 100% clear here is that with the wavelength zones and the Verizon 5G network, when you distribute that content, you are not on the internet. The only thing that can access that 5G, that wavelength zone here is the Verizon 5G network in that geographical area. So that's a thing that you can control by selecting the right wavelength zone. The benefit of only distributing it within that area is that it is kind of like a dedicated network. It's not the internet. It is a Verizon network. Works much better than the rest of the internet. So more stable.
Thank you.
Second thing, well, we ran the test. We did
Hold
a test.
on.
So
I got the money here.
okay,
Right.
make sure it's a 100. Okay. The other aspect of this is, from a distribution there, it's not only the 5G, but you get the 5G, you get the 4G LTE. So if something is actually not working on that 5G network, which can happen, and we've seen it happen, you're not dead in the water. You have the 4G LTE that can actually pick up from there. And we're also using this as part of the technology stack that we put in place there. So when something is not fully working, there's another way for that communications to happen. And that's the reason why he took 2 years there. The strategy of delivering that stream is not one path of delivery. It's actually many paths of delivery. Multiple wavelength zones, multiple stream bit rates, multiple receivers. So if something fails, if something fails at any level of the infrastructure or the architecture, there will be another path of delivery for the stream. That's the reason why he took 2 years. We define all of those possible problems that can happen and find a solution for it. Okay. If you were going to start that today, well, I think you can learn from the experience that this team has here. And there's white papers, I'm sure that will be coming up from that. We actually had a presentation yesterday that will be made available where we explain the how, that goes into more the technical details, so you can actually take a look at that. But yes, there's a lot of best practices that came out of this exercise. Start there. Technology is also something that is disposable this day. So when you start doing something, think about how you're going to remove it. Okay? And if it has to do with some hardware devices or some type of processing, there's always multiple solutions. Think about interoperabilities of processing. And we've done that in what we've architected there. And that's the reason why I think we got to a point where we were able to move enough parts to create a very stable, high-performance infrastructure.
Great. Eric, same question?
Yeah, I would say that, to Louis' point, there's a number of folks. I think you see the rough recipe of what you need to lay out here. We certainly learned, and I would say, traversing networks, all networks have attributes. They can have problems. Things can be messier and noisier than we anticipate. And I think what Louis, the bigger part is, by having an extra 5G network, that's tremendous, but it's really having access to all networks and being able to ensure signal path at all pieces. And then from our perspective, to be able to allow that to be operated, engineered, orchestrated, visible, that you can see what's going on. We spent a lot of time in our favorite Basking Ridge looking at different data points and confirming and denying where we were. And I think visibility is something that the broadcast industry has lived without for so long, it doesn't fully appreciate. And if anything, as you now multiply all these signal paths, you get tremendous uptimes, you get tremendous benefits, but you inherently have more complexity. So how do you then aggregate and abstract that and make that manageable? And I think that was what we've collectively put out here, and what we're trying to set is something that would say, we've done this, we know how this works, we can help be a trusted advisor and take a fellow journey, but we can save you 2 years.
Dave, 30 seconds or less, the same question. Where would you start?
Where would I start?
Yeah.
I would look at what I'm trying to deliver, right? Yeah. So what I'm trying to deliver and where I'm trying to deliver it to. So I'm looking at it from a connectivity, from a transport perspective, but I'm also thinking in terms of what can I benefit from? What other things can I do with what I'm trying to deliver that I could transform it into, right? And that, and and then how can some of this technology that we're introducing to the market be leveraged to allow that to be manifested?
Saravana?
So all I would say is there's a lot of excitement at the grassroots level from a developer standpoint on what 5G can do, how easy it is to get started on delivering a solution from AWS Wavelength. What I would say is one thing which is very important for the customers as well as enterprises to know is 5G is evolving, right? It's going to take some time for Verizons of the world and other carriers to get that network to be ready for full-blown production environment. So don't get disappointed that initially when you start a POC or a research and development project at the grassroots level where development team is looking at some use cases, there's a lot of investments that Verizon is making in that space, which is going to power all these applications in the future along with Wavelength Zone. So don't be disappointed if that point in time you didn't get the applications to behave the way it has to be behaved, but things are changing very dramatically and it is becoming more and more reliable and more of network capacity is being added. So be patient.
So thank you. I want to capstone this real quickly with, one of the things that we didn't really dig deep into is the fact that, we just took what was a broadcast network that was being delivered over satellite and we added intelligence to it at almost every endpoint. That's something unique and we didn't get a chance to even dive deep into.
Bidirectionality too.
Yeah, the bidirectionality, the way, just adding intelligence into what will be a broadcast environment is something new and exciting, and that's one of the additional benefits that come from it. I want to thank our panelists. This is great. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Again, my name's Tim Stevens from Verizon, and thank you everybody for being here with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.